And good morning, everybody. Here are your notes and examples for IXL.com, Algebra 1, Module BB.2. And we're going to be talking about the characteristics of quadratic functions. And yesterday we were talking about the graphs. Today we're going to be looking at the equations to determine what those characteristics are on the graph. And today when we're looking at the equations, we're going to be looking at the equations in their general form, so standard form. So the standard form for a quadratic is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So you have three terms for a quadratic. You have the term where the variable x is being squared. You have the middle term where x is to the power of 1, and then you have the last term, which is a constant, so there's no variable. So you have the squared term, the x, and then the constant. And yesterday in the module BB.1 we were looking at the characteristics of a graph. So if you look at your basic shape for a parabola, so we know that this is going to graph out to be some sort of parabola. One of the key features of a parabola is where the center is, or the axis of symmetry. So that's going to be a vertical line at the vertex. So this would be the axis of symmetry. And to locate the center of the graph when you're given the equation in standard form, the formula we're going to use to locate the vertical line at x is going to be x equals opposite b, so negative the b value over 2a. And again, these a and b values are coming from that standard form. So y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So in terms of this formula to find the center, the b value here is going to be the b value in the equation when it's in its standard form, and the a value in the formula is going to be that lead coefficient on the x squared term. So that's going to be your a and your b. And this will find us the axis of symmetry, the center of the graph. Once you know the center of the graph, you can answer a few different questions. You could answer what the minimum or maximum value is. So at the vertex, you're going to get a min if the graph is facing up. If the graph happened to be facing down, so let's say you had another type of parabola, if you had a downward facing graph, then the vertex is going to be at a max. So this would happen to be a max. So a min or a max happens at the vertex, which is the axis of symmetry. So a lot of the questions in this next module are going to ask us for probably 3 or 4 different things. They might ask us for the axis of symmetry, which would just be this equation right here. They might ask us for the minimum value or the maximum value, which is again going to occur at that axis of symmetry, the vertex, or they might just ask you for the ordered pair of the vertex. So the x comma y ordered pair at the vertex. And one more thing they might ask you is they might ask you what the y-intercept is. We've talked about the y-intercept when we talked about graphing lines. It was basically where the graph crossed the y-axis. So they might ask you for the y-intercept in some of these problems. And in short, the y-intercept where the graph is going to cross the y-axis is always going to be your your C value. And let's make a picture and show why that is the case. So if we were looking at the graph of a parabola, and if we were interested in finding where it crosses the y-axis, so let's say we had something like this, and right here is where it crosses the y-axis. So remember, this is your y-axis. If you think about the ordered pair on the y-axis anywhere, your x value on the x scale is always going to be 0. So x would have to be 0. And then your y value would be on the y-axis. So if you're looking at the standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, we know if we are on the y-axis, our x value has to be 0. So you're going to get y equals a. The x, we know that has to be 0, plus the b, and again the x has to be 0 if we're going to be on the y-axis, plus the c. And if you simplify this, 0 squared is 0 times the a, that's just going to be 0, and b times 0 is just 0, so you're basically left with y equals c. So your y-intercept is always just going to be that last term when it's in its standard form, the c value. So that is going to be your y-intercept. So if you were looking at an equation, y equals 3x squared plus 2x plus 7, and someone asked you for the y-intercept, the y-intercept will just be this last number, 7. Very similar to, if you think about it, a linear function, y equals mx plus b. If you had a linear function, y equals mx plus b, and if someone asked you for the y-intercept, it's always just going to be that last number, the number without the variable, the constant. So if you had y equals 3x plus 7, and someone asked you for the y-intercept, you would say it's going to be 7. So it's always the last number in the equation without the variable on it. And let's go ahead and jump right into some IXL problems. So here's the first type they might give you. It says find the equation of the axis of symmetry. So they want the equation of the axis of symmetry. This is where we use that formula, x equals opposite b over 2a. And this is coming from our standard form. So y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So notice on this one you have the squared term, that's your x squared term, and you have the c, the constant. So the b in this case would actually have to be 0. So if I was to take this equation, y equals x squared, you would need the b to be 0 plus 0x minus 10. So your a value is 1 in this case. Your b value is 0. And your c value is the negative 10. So this is your c value, this is your b, and this is your a. So if we were to put this into our equation, it's going to be negative, what's the b value? In this case it's 0, over 2 times, what's the a value? In this case the a value is 1. So you're going to get 0 over 2. And 0 divided by 2, 0 divided by any number will be 0. So we're going going to have the equation x equals 0. Make sure when you put this into the answer box, they did specifically say write the equation for it, so you're going to need a variable and an equal sign. So make sure you actually put in the x equals 0. If you just put 0 in the answer box, it will call you wrong. And the next problem, this one, it says find the y-intercept. So if this is our standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and what they're giving us is y equals x squared plus x. So we need to make sure we can identify the a, b, and c values before we really work with the standard form of the equation. So the a value would just have to be a 1. If there's no number there, it would just be times 1. So a happens to be 1. B would happen to be 1 times x. And the c, in this case, happens to be 0 because there's nothing there. So this is going to be your a. This is going to be the b value. And this one is the c value. And we had said the y-intercept is always just going to be the c value. So in this case, the y-intercept is going to be the c value, which is 0. So you can say your y-intercept is 0. So you want to put 0 into the answer box. So while you're getting familiar with this general form, it's probably a good idea to slow down and make sure you identify the a, the b, and the c value for each equation. Not all the equations are going to have 3 terms, so if one of those terms is missing, then that means that its a, b, or c value must be 0. Let's go ahead and look at another problem. This one, it says find the equation of the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry will occur at negative the b value divided by 2 times the a value. So if we have the general form, ax squared plus bx plus c, and what they give us is y equals, they give us the squared term, x squared, but they don't have a second term or a third term. So your a value is going to have to be 1. Your b value would have to be 0 because there's nothing there for that term. And your c value would have to be 0 since there's nothing there. So if you were to kind of finish their equation for them, this would have to be plus 0x plus 0 for the c. So to use our equation to find the axis of symmetry, x is going to equal, what's the b value? 0 in this case, over 2 times, what's the a value? 1. Negative 0 would just be the same thing as 0. And 0 divided by 2, 0 divided by any number is always 0. And that's going to be your equation. So x equals 0. And don't forget to type that in as an actual equation into the answer box. So you need to have the x equals 0 to get credit for that. And here's the next one. So this one, what is the y-intercept? We know the y-intercept is always the c value, the last number in the equation that does not have a variable on it. So our c value is 8. So we're just going to say 8. So the y-intercept problems, those are pretty quick once you identify the c value. It's just whatever the c value is. So 8. The next one, find the y-intercept. So again, once you know what the c value is, Notice you have your x squared, and then this would be your bx term. So the c value in this case is technically a plus 0 for the c. So this is your c value. So the y-intercept is going to be 0. And here's another problem. Find the equation of the axis of symmetry. So we know the center of the graph, the axis of symmetry, is at negative b, opposite b, over 2a. We want to identify our a, b, and c values. So if there's nothing in front of the variable, we would just say it's 1. So a has to be 1 in this case. The b would have to be 7. And the c would have to be 9. And to use this equation, we need the a and the b value. So x is going to be negative whatever the b value is, which in this case is 7, over 2 times whatever the a value is, which in this case is 1. So x equals negative 7 over 2. And that should be the equation for the axis of symmetry. And again, you don't want to just type in negative 7 over 2. You need to actually put in the x equals negative 7 over 2 when you type that in. And this one's a new type of problem. This one, they want you to find the minimum value. So the minimum is going to occur at the vertex. So we need to find the vertex. And the vertex is going to occur at the axis of symmetry, opposite b over 2a. So we need to first find the center of the graph. So we'll say this is going to be our b value, since the c value would be the end of it, which is 0. And this is going to be our a value. So x equals negative whatever the b value is. Notice in this case it's negative 2, so it's going to be negative 2. Since your b is a negative, so you get 2 negatives in a row. So it's negative 2, divided by 2 times the a value, and the a value in this case is 1. So we get a negative 2 up top, which is going to be 2. 2 times 1 down bottom, which is 2. Simplify, we should get 1. So the center of our graph is going to be at x equals 1. So if we tried to visualize this graph, right here at x equals 1, we have the axis of symmetry. So that's the center line for this particular quadratic or this particular parabola. They want to know what the minimum value is, so we need to find the complete ordered pair x comma y. So we know right now that it's going to be at 1 comma some sort of y value. So to find the y value, you want to take your x value and go put it back into the equation and solve for y. So let's say we have y equals, we know the x value is going to be 1, so 1 squared, minus 2 times the x value, which is 1. And if we work this out, y equals 1 squared is just 1, minus 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is 2, so minus 2. And 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So your y value would have to be negative 1. So now we know more about this vertex, this ordered pair. The center is going to be at x equals 1, and the y value is negative 1 when x is 1. So the vertex, if we wanted to finish plotting, the vertex is going to be at 1 comma negative 1. And this parabola, it's a positive a value, so it would be opening up. And the minimum is going to be right there at the vertex. So the minimum is going to be this y value. By minimum, they mean what's the minimum y value. So the minimum y value is -1. So we could put -1 into the answer box. So it's kind of a two-step process. First you have to find the center, the x value, and then after that you need to find the complete vertex and find that y value on the vertex. And here's a problem where they don't ask for the min or the max, they just want you to complete the vertex. So to complete the vertex you have to find the center. So x equals opposite b over 2a to find the axis of symmetry, the center of the graph. And what is our b value in this case? Notice this does not have a variable on it, that's actually the c value. So the b value would be in the middle. So your b is going to be 0 in this case, since you have no middle term. So x equals -0 over 2 times the a value, which is 1, and 0 over any number, 0 over 2 is going to be 0. So we know the x coordinate is 0. And then we need to go find this missing y coordinate. So to find the missing y, when x is 0, you just go back to your equation and put that into the equation. So y is equal to x squared plus 5. But what do we know about x? We know x is 0. So y equals 0 squared plus 5. So y would have to be 5. So that's going to be your second coordinate. So the vertex would be at 0, 5. So to find the vertex or to find a min or a max, you need to find the x value for the axis of symmetry and then plug that in and find the y value. And here's another min-max problem. So they want the minimum value, so they just want the y value on the vertex. So let's just go find the vertex and we can answer the question. So x equals opposite the b value over 2a. So opposite, what's the b value in this case? -2, so it's going to be a -2. All over 2 times the a value. What is the a value? That's going to be 1. And then up top, -2, 2 negatives in a row, that's going to make it positive. 2 over 2, which is 1. So we know as far as the x value, it's going to be 1. So if we were thinking of this as an ordered pair, it's 1 comma something for the y value. And we need to go find that y value. So we're going to go back to our equation that will tell us what y is when we have a certain x value. So we'll say y is equal to, what is our x value? 1 minus 2 and again, what's the x value? 1 minus that constant, -2, and then just compute. So y equals 1 squared is 1, -2 times the 1 is -2, and that's going to get you 1 minus 2 minus 2, so that's going to get you -3. So we now know the y value happens to be -3, so we can put that into the ordered pair. So if the question was, what is the vertex, that's your vertex, 1, -3. If the question is, what's the minimum value, the minimum value, they mean the minimum y value. So the minimum output is going to be -3. So we're going to put -3 into the answer box. And those are your notes and examples for IXL.com, section BB.2, and it's working with that standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and finding the center of the graph, the axis of symmetry, and answering questions off of that.